Hello, my name is Carol May Whittick, spiritual life coach and your host of Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. What is the awakening? This is the moment in time when humanity rises up out of the darkness. Who is awakening? Each one of us present on earth today, reclaiming our sovereignty, seeking greater possibilities in our reality and looking for solutions. We know being awakened is not a lofty ideal, but a necessity. If we can transform ourselves, we can change the world. Guests on Her Conversations will speak to your spirituality, sensuality, and soul. Listen to their stories and hear how they are in service to the world. Let their words in these conversations embolden and inspire you. If you don't already know, there is a sister podcast to Her Conversations, which is called Her Inspirations. Each episode of Her Inspirations is an exploration of things that we encounter as we embark on our spiritual and awakening journeys. On the Monday following the Friday release of Her Inspirations, I send out an accompanying email for each episode. Listen to Her Inspirations if you're on that journey. Join the mailing list and you'll receive additional meditation, journaling and inspiration notes, any links to additional relevant resources and news of any exclusives. So use the link in the show notes to join up and also to listen to Her Inspirations. And you'll also receive the free Embody Her course, where you feel into your vision physically, emotionally and spiritually and start to take action on your dreams. My guest this week is Yael T.W. She is a Debra Silverman Certified Astrologer, teacher and author. For 12 years she led a successful financial career, but her spirit was not content. During her search for answers, she explored Buddhism, occultism, meditation practices and yoga. Now as an astrologer, she helps her clients understand themselves better, love themselves and live the life they want. During this conversation, Yael shares how the magic and the accuracy of astrology opened her eyes up to herself and also shares her unique perspective on astrology. She also reads my chart, which was not only a demonstration of her gift, but also brought a new level of clarity about my life to me. So as always, I begin by asking my guests, Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. When do you feel that higher energetic resonance?
Luckily and fortunately, I would say most days, every moment of the day. It hasn't been like that like all throughout my life. It's something that is relatively new to me, that I feel like I really live in this high vibration. It is mainly nourished by, it's nourished by everything. Like it's nourished by mothering my son. It's nourished by being a partner, being in a very good marriage with my husband, having a beautiful relationship of growth. It is nourished by my astrology sessions with clients and really being there and seeing the magic and seeing, the aha moments and how they lead my clients to thrive in their lives. It gives me so much joy and this feeling that I am where I need to be and I'm fulfilling my purpose. And through writing really makes me, again, like I feel that I'm 50 years old and it took me a long time to get here, but that now I've always felt that I have a lot to say and I have a lot of wisdom, but I couldn't find the right structure to bring it out. I felt like there was always a dissonance between like what I had in me and what I was able to express. Mm-hmm. And now there is a match and I feel like I can finally express who I am and what I want to bring to this world through the structure of astrology, through the structure of the planet. So I needed this platform. I needed because I'm not completely woo. Like I need woo to be practical. I'm a very practical person. So yeah, so having And now, I live in this place where I live in Asheville, in North Carolina, in the United States. And it's a place that nature and city really integrate. We have bears living with us, like real life bears, families of bears. And, so it's like the wild nature is in your backyard. And I just love it. I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I'm so grateful. I'm just so grateful to be here. I'm so grateful that I have, sometimes I'm like, how did I end up with this? Like with having, I would just move to a beautiful house. It's like a dream house. And I'm like, yeah. So I feel like I'm in this high vibration, like from the moment I wake up, and in real gratitude, like honest, authentic gratitude. It's not like the gratitude of like that I've been like all my, like for years since I started my what you would call a spiritual journey, or connecting to yoga and meditation, Buddhism and astrology. So I was always like saying gratitude prayers, but I couldn't completely stand behind them. It was like a gratitude. It was like fake it until you make it. And I made it. It worked. Yeah. So here I am. I'm super grateful, and I feel I'm in love with myself. I'm in love with my life, and I'm living in a high vibration.
Perfect. That just encapsulates what higher energetic resonance is all about. And also what's interesting, there's a couple of things that you said that kind of tweaked with me as well, is like when you say you get to 50, because I kind of crossed the threshold last year, and it seems like when you get to 50, then there is this kind of like light bulb moment where it all makes sense. Like everything that previous, like you say, it took a long time to get there. And in my mind, it's like, yeah, it took us 50 years to get here in the middle of all of this stuff, to really find out who and what we are and what we stand for. But also, like you say, having like a real gratitude as well. For everything. So whatever might be considered like a bad experience or a hard experience, and, talking from myself, is a level of, I'm grateful for that, because if I hadn't had that experience, maybe I wouldn't be able to speak about and do things the way that I do now with a level, I wouldn't have been tested. My resilience wouldn't have been tested. And now I'm grateful for all of it. And like you said, in a real way, as opposed to the kind of the affirmation and journaling gratitude that feels like you're kind of, you're training yourself. You say you fake it till you make it. You kind of get into the habit of saying thank you for things, but then it's when you lean back and are able to say thanks for it all without exception that you've really tapped into what gratitude is all about, so.
Absolutely. Whenever I deal with a challenge, and obviously, like I don't want, the people who listen to think that my life is just, like effortless, no challenges, no, like no frustrations. Yes, there are frustrations, there are heartbreaks, there is pain, a lot of it. It's not that it's not a part of the suffering is still part of life. That's super important, even today. But it's exactly like you said, Carol. It's taking the opportunity, like whenever I deal with something and I'm like, okay, then when I deal with it and I figure out, how to work with it, I can help my clients deal with similar situations. It gives me the experience. I can write about it, like like I can write about it and help other people to deal with this kind of hardship, because I come from a place where I feel experienced with dealing with hardship. And you are too, right? So because we experience, and for some people, it's not that everyone who reaches 50, it's like, oh, it's so sweet right now. Some people feel like, oh, I'm old, and they become grumpy, and like, no, I think like because we did the work and we do the work we do, and that's where like spiritual aspects have to be integrated in our life, finding meaning, especially for you, Scorpio sun in that house. We'll talk about your chart a little bit later, but you came here to find meaning to life through the emotional world, through hardship, and convert your hardship into a purpose. That's the high road. So that's what I've been doing and you've been doing. And then we get to this sweet spot, but we can't do it if we run away from hardship.
Right. Before we get to that point, I just want to give you the opportunity to just tell a little bit about who you are and your story so that people can really understand a bit more about you.
Yeah. So my hardship, it's a direct connection to my story, because my life started with a lot of hardship. My brother got sick with leukemia when he was 15. So my parents were in the hospital with him for like 3 years. And then when they came out, my mom immediately got sick and passed away. So since I was 18, and then my dad had a new family already. So I was like, I found myself on my own. So it was like immediately a survival mode. I was in a survival mode. And this is why, I went to study economic and accounting, because I knew that I needed something that I also, like, throughout my life, I saw my mom was always like the weak in the family. Like my dad was the provider. And so like I always experienced my mom as being very weak and my dad having all the power, because he was the one who was making the money. And I knew that wouldn't work for me. I needed financial independence. I needed something that will give it to me. So there was no question about like fulfilling my purpose or doing something creative. And I was already like, very creative, but I wanted to make money. So I studied that, and I had a very successful financial career for 12 years. I worked in tech companies. I managed financial systems. And I loved it in many levels. I really loved it. I loved managing stuff. I was very good at it. The mental stimulation. It was exciting. I made a lot of money. I had everything I wanted. But something was still missing. I still didn't feel I was in the right place. When people were talking with me about what I was doing, I didn't want to talk about it. I felt embarrassed, not because I think it is embarrassing to work in corporate or to be, a financial person. It just didn't feel right for me. So that's why I was embarrassed. And then at a certain point, I saved enough money and I got a small inheritance. And I was like, okay, I'm taking a leap of faith. I've always wanted to write a book. That was my dream. I wanted to be a writer. I'm going to leave the comfort of the financial world, and I'm going to try to become a writer. And I took a year break. During this year, I did a yoga teacher training. I was already very much into yoga, and I've already started like meditation and Buddhism. Like it started through like asking the questions of like, what is the meaning of all of that? What am I doing here? And then I was completely carried away with yoga. I was so in love with it, and I was in love with teaching. And the book was just like, like pushed to the side, and I became a partner in a yoga studio. And it was really like, finally I felt this, wow, I'm doing something I have so much passion for, and I'm so in love with what I do and the community and the people. And I felt it was so meaningful. But then again, at a certain point, I felt it's close to where I need to be, but it's not exactly that. Because for me, it was more about talking with people about what they were going through and understanding. I felt like I understand the human psyche more than I understood the human body. And I slowly understood that to be a good yoga teacher, you need a better understanding of the physical body. And I was just not interested in that so much. It didn't attract me. So then in 2013, I met my teacher, Debra Silverman. She's a big deal in the astrology world. And she is a very good friend of Sting, and she has been his personal astrologer for decades. So it's, and I had a mutual friend. I met her, and I always I loved astrology since I was a kid. My dad had books about every subject in our house, and there was an astrology book, and it was my favorite. I just read and I learned all about the signs and everything. So I knew astrology. I thought a few times in my life, I thought of becoming an astrologer. But as I said in the beginning, because I'm also a very practical person, it felt like, oh, it would be too woo, it would be like, I don't know. And when I saw Debra, she felt like, oh, she's just a cool woman. She's like me, she's not like, like a wickedy, like a witch from the forest. She's like, she had like her yoga clothes, and, I was like, oh, I can be like her. So, and then the reading itself, it was amazing. It was such a strong, powerful shift to my life. It completely transformed me because she reminded me things about myself that I forgot. She said, "You're responsible." And I'm like, I'm not responsible. I just live off my savings and travel around the world teaching and studying yoga and going to meditation retreats. And I was like, I'm not, but she reminded me that I was. When my mom died for a few years, I stepped into her position and I took care of my brothers. I was 18. Like my natural tendency was to be responsible. And because I was so responsible, I had to escape that, and in my work, I was always very responsible. So she brought me back to my discipline. She brought me back to my responsibility. She connected me with I always thought that I was fire and air, because in Ayurveda, I'm classified as Vata Pitta. So in my nutrition, I always had to eliminate like fiery things, spicy things. But in my astrology chart, I don't have fire. And just understanding that I'm actually very sensitive and very watery, and that that fire was my missing element and I needed to cultivate fire, suddenly made so much sense, because I was trying to pretend to be something that I was not. I was not a fiery person. So as soon as it's like she brought me back to myself, and then I could embody myself. And as soon as that happened, I met my husband, we had a child, like all my dreams started happening. We moved to the States. I became an astrologer. I became a certified astrologer by Debra. We're only like 21 certified astrologers now all over the world. One was just recently certified in England. So it's a very exclusive and a group that I'm very honored to be a part of. And I'm a mentor at her school. So I also teach astrology in the Applied Astrology School. And I'm writing for mindfulness, consciousness magazines like Tiny Buddha and Elephant Journal. And I'm currently writing on my book. So all my dreams started happening after I met Debra. And I'm so happy to be able and help other people to go through the same transformation that Debra did to me.
Gosh, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. It's and what it is that you've done as well, because like you say, bringing the practical to the woo-woo, because there are so many things and let's just stick with astrology, that has been watered down so much, so that you just kind of look at what you see in the magazines and everything, and so that you have this real kind of it is a woo-woo element to it based on magazines. And I had an interest in astrology, but my at that point in time, my only real exposure to it was at the back of a magazine or back of a newspaper. When you're talking about the witchy woman, there used to be this one of the famous women in the UK, one of the famous astrologers in all the newspapers was Mystic Meg. So again, she, you know, she had like a kind of like probably like a velvet cape and a black fringe, and the stars sign like around this whole kind of thing. But I always had this fascination with it. But then, of course, it gets pushed to the side as just some kind of girly stuff that doesn't really mean anything because of the way it's portrayed in the media or how people get attracted to it. But I feel that the times that we're moving into, many of these skills and crafts and arts are necessary as we really connect to all of the ways that people used to see the world or see other people or guide themselves through their lives, particularly as we're like really on the brink of going into a deep technological age, you know, and not wanting to lose sight of who we are as human beings. Or, you know, I think it's a choice. There's a choice point for people where they either abandon themselves and kind of get taken into technology, to what extent that might be, or you stay grounded in the real, you know, the reality of things. And the thing is, things that were considered to be woo-woo, like astrology, that rely on nature and all of the natural aspects around us to kind of tell us where we are in the scheme of things, are the things that people are really taking advantage of and finding a deep respect for as well. I mean, are you seeing that as well, that kind of where we are in terms of the technological, but how also people are showing up to you as clients as well?
Definitely. Look, we are in an era where we have a lot of expectations of life. You know, our parents, they didn't, you know, like, I come from, you know, like, I'm originally Jewish. I come from, you know, like the heritage of the Holocaust. Okay. So it's like they only wanted to survive. It was only about survival. My parents and my grandparents, they didn't even dream about being happy. They didn't dream about living in abundance. They didn't dream about fulfilling their purpose. It was like, you know, they just wanted to make enough money. Like, even in the States, there was like a big financial crisis in the 30s. And you know, and then like people just wanted to have, you know, like enough money to you know, to pay for their bills and to have food on their table. Like, we're now in a place where we want things that humans haven't even conceived as possible, or even didn't think about. For, you know, like, if Europe was in war for hundreds of years, constantly war. So it was just like, it was all a survival mode. So we're shifting from a survival mode to a fulfillment mode. Now we want our marriages to be fulfilling. We want growth in our relationships. We want our jobs to be more than, you know, like, I don't want to work in just, you know, like, just a job that pays money. That's not enough for most people, you know. So we're and these are and women were not even allowed to vote. We're not allowed to study. We're not allowed to study spirituality. Even Buddhism didn't allow women to study. Buddhists believe that women are not, most Buddhists, like the origins of Buddhism, don't believe that women can attain enlightenment. So the women, even when they're nuns and they study, but they're more like to support the men. They're not on their own. They're not expected to reach enlightenment, unlike men. So for women to be, you know, like, maybe to be mothers, maybe to have family, and on top of it to have a career, and on top of it, you know, women didn't have businesses. So we have a lot of expectations, and in order to be able to navigate all these expectations that we have, and to really be able to fulfill them and not make them stressful, we need tools like astrology. We need tools like coaching. There is a reason why all these modalities started thriving, because we're like, you know, we find ourselves in places, many women, and I was also in this position, you know, like all the social media, and you know, like, we expect ourselves to thrive. And then if we don't, or if we don't meet certain, it's like, okay, how do I still find joy taking the path, just being able to like to know that I am on the right path, to know that I am fulfilling myself, even if I haven't published my book yet, or even if I haven't signed the contract for my book yet, I know that I'm doing everything I can to have this book published and to have this book successful. And I enjoy my path of writing it. So when you are on this path, it's easier for you, but I wouldn't be here if I didn't have the help of astrology.
Mm-hmm. In what ways would you say that it's helped you to get to finding yourself in the place that, enjoying the path as well, which is actually to speak on that before you respond, is I think this is where people are finding joy as well. It's not just in the attainment of the goal, it's actually in the journey of finding out who they are to get to the goal. And in fact, the attainment of the goal may not even necessarily be that important, because you're not chasing, because you're in it already. You're embodying your success already. You know who you are, so you know every step that you take every day is part of your purpose. Whereas the old world way of working is, this is your goal and you've got to go towards it, so it's always separate from you. So you're always like chasing, running, kicking people down to the side, because it's like it only looks like there's kind of one cherry on the top of the cake that everyone's aiming for. Whereas when you're coming from your soul's work, when you're coming from your passion, it's inside of you. So you just do everything that keeps you in that juiciness of like knowing that that's what you're doing, and it doesn't matter when it happens, because it's going to happen, because you're doing what it takes to make it happen. You're becoming more of what you need to be to make it happen, and you don't feel a sense of scarcity. Well, I'm talking for myself. You don't feel a sense of scarcity because it's yours. It's your dream. It's nobody else's, and what else can you do but do this every day with gratitude, with all of the things. So how does your astrology open it up for you, help you? How has it guided you, going back to that question?
Yeah, so first of all, it's really like, it's understanding myself, as I said, understanding that I needed to cultivate fire every morning. Here I have a candle lit. It's handmade by someone who lives right here, locally handmade. And I light a candle every morning as soon as I sit at my desk. This is my reminder. You need to cultivate fire. And it's also being bold and brave. It's jumping into the water. I'm now going to teach. There was, between the certified astrologers, there was an initiation, like if you want to do a webinar, and to all the other astrologers. And some of these astrologers, they've been there 10, 20 years before I came to the picture. And I'm doing this webinar to them, teaching them about the midheaven and the IC. And I'm like, there is anxiousness about that, but it's also like, I have Aries MC like you do. So we need to be bold. We need to be brave. We need to do things that are courageous, because this is the essence of Aries. We need to initiate. We can't follow. So when I initiate, when I'm a pioneer, when I am bold and courageous, when opportunities come to me and I say yes, even though I'm afraid. I had and my teacher wanted me to write something for her, and it was like a really good job, and I really wanted it, but it was while we were moving, and it was like, how will I do it? And I'm also teaching now, so it was like, I'm teaching and we're moving, and like, how am I going to do it? But I'm like, I'm not saying no to that. I want this opportunity. So it's this like reminder. I have, and if I would have midheaven in Taurus, I would probably think about it, and I would say no, because, the most important thing is I need stability, and I need to calm down, and chasing too many things is not good for me. But in my career, I need to. This is part of what I need. And it's easy for me to do partnership with others. because in my tendency, I'm a Libra, but I need to learn to stand out and do things on my own. And my book, it's an initiative. It's a whole new structure. Okay. And then I remind myself, you are a pioneer. You came here to pioneer something. You need to, sometimes I'm like, what if, people will read it and would think that this is crazy because it's not conventional astrology, and it's not like it's a completely new structure. And maybe my teacher would read it and she said like she doesn't agree with some of the things there, and I'm like, but I am a pioneer. I remind myself that all the time. And the more I tune with that, the more I feel fulfilled, because I am aligning with my career purpose. Okay, so it's just, I'm just showing you one point on my chart.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but there are so many others. For example, I have my sun and 3 other planets in the 12th house. So when someone has 3 or more planets in a certain house, and especially if they include like the sun, it's a very important house. So the 12th house is all about spirituality. It's all about connecting to our soul. It's about wanting to help other people. When I understood that my whole theme, my whole story in this life is more about helping other people, and about connecting to my spiritual practices, connecting to my soul, being in alignment with my soul, then it all made sense. It all made sense. I didn't come here to necessarily be in a relationship. My relationship does support that, but it's not my life purpose. My life purpose is to be spiritual in the sense, and I'm talking about real spirituality, like practicing meditation, being disciplined about my yoga practice. It's not just, I think positive thoughts all day. I think for me, spirituality is all about being able to face what's real. What do I really feel? What do I really want? And it's not about having, sattvic or beautiful, clean, white desires. It's actually seeing the dark sides of myself every day, seeing where I'm angry, seeing where I'm jealous, and not just seeing it, allowing the experience to manifest in me, not running away, not saying, oh, that was fine, this person hurt me, but I'm completely fine. No, I'm hurt. I'm hurt, and I feel the pain of it. That's for me spirituality.
I'm 100% with you, and when I'm coaching clients, that's what I'm seeing. It's like the spirituality is past the woo-woo-ness of it, because as you go and you grow through different modalities, you kind of get caught up in woo-woo type stuff, and very real and potent energetic practices that will keep you out of pain. I can name many things that will keep you on a high for years if you want, but you're not dealing with the stuff. And I'm all about grounded spirituality, like you've mentioned, and also that each of them come away with their own spiritual philosophy. So whatever it looks like for you, but like you said, to allow it to be real, grounded, and disciplined as well. That's the part that's important, that it's not just something that you dip in and out of for a festival or because it's cool or whatever you want to do. And those kind of practices, those light experiences don't really help anyone, and don't necessarily give spirituality a good name, because they don't really give anyone a real experience. And I loved also what you said about emotion and feeling emotion and acknowledging what emotion does for you. So if you feel jealous, like, okay, acknowledge the jealousy. It's an icky one to say, yeah, I'm feeling jealous about that person and sing them, but what does that mean? It means there's part of you that's saying that you need to look at why you feel jealous about that. Maybe there's something there that you need to incorporate, and your soul is going, hang on, you're selling yourself short. Or maybe you've fallen into comparison too much, which is making you feel less than, and that's why you feel your jealousy. So it's like acknowledging your jealousy and asking yourself, what is jealousy showing you? What is jealousy showing me? Or anger as well, and acknowledging anger. And so many people want to pull away from anger because it's like, oh, I don't want to be angry, but why are you angry? And let it be, you're entitled to your rage. And like you say, when people hurt you, because for me, I was always the one like, yeah, they did that, but love and light and let it be all right. And they're going through their stuff. It's like, no, sometimes you did me over and it hurt and it was unnecessary. And and acknowledging it from my point of view, like what part of me allowed myself to be treated like that by that person? When wasn't I standing up for myself? Why didn't I put on my like big girl pants and the big red dress and the video and show them exactly who I am, so that they didn't feel that they could come and like wipe their feet all over me? But then again, that lesson of being hurt has been like, okay, how many more times am I going to allow that to happen before I receive the lesson? So I think emotions are less, especially those strong negative emotions that we feel are the ones that we need to lean into and explore the most, because we'll get a real perspective of who we are as spiritual beings. So I love that you kind of talked about emotions, because I know that people get so trapped and so beat themselves up so much about feeling these harder emotions, these bigger emotions, when these are the ones that are more transformative. It's easy to love. A lot of it.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what I talk about in my moon chapter. So the moon is all about the emotions. It's how to cultivate a healthy emotional world, a healthy connection with our emotions without feeling that, like some emotions are valid and some are not. This is not true. And every emotion that we feel, it's like, I call emotions, they're like toddlers. They want your attention. You need to give them attention. When you give them the attention they need, they leave you alone. And then when you really allow yourself to feel the anger, the jealousy, the pain, they don't stay as trauma. Trauma is something that is a wound that stays with you and keeps managing you. It creates psychological patterns that then continue to manage you and push your triggers in a way that does not serve you well, right? When we allow ourselves to really to be present with everything we feel, even the hard feelings, then we cry it, we express it, we write about it, we process it, but we mainly feel it. Okay, so many people they process their emotions through their mind. They can talk about their emotions, they can sometimes cry, but even when they cry, they push them away. They're like, I don't want to cry anymore. I just want to get out of it. And instead of like, I want to be in it. I want to feel it. Okay. And you got it naturally, because this is Scorpio.
Tell me what you found.
So the wisdom of Scorpio. So it's so interesting that this is that came up through our conversation, because your sun is in Scorpio in the 4th house. So it's so much water. It's Scorpio in the house of Cancer. Okay. So Cancer is here to learn the emotional world. Okay. This is your theme. You came here and you have 3 planets in the 4th house. So like I said, when you have 3 or more planets in a certain house, this is, and especially if the sun is there. So this is also true for you. You came here to learn the emotional world and help people heal their wounds, their traumas. Okay. To through understanding and teaching them how to work with their emotions. Okay. And your Uranus is there. Uranus is the brilliant, like it's not conventional. It's out of the box. So your emotional wisdom is very unique. It's very out of the box. It's not like, most of what you hear in most like spiritual podcasts, right? Like we talk about like positive and positivity and be happy now. And like you bring the part that is very Scorpio-ish, which means Scorpio is the sign that is all about being real. Okay. It's all about pain and pleasure are the same. They are. If you really notice your physical sensations when you experience joy and when you experience pain, you will notice that they manifest almost the same physically. Tears of joy, tears of pain. We cry. Physically, they feel the same. It's insane to realize that we're so drawn into joy and we're running away from pain, but physically they feel the same. It's all in our mind, in our judgment that we discern them. Okay, so not that I'm not advocating pain. I don't want people to think that like living in pain is right. If you are in a relationship that causes you pain, it's not right. Okay, but it's just like giving birth. Giving birth is the most painful experience, but it also causes so much joy. It's ecstatic. So in this respect, I'm not talking about like wanting to be in abusive relationships or being in a situation that is toxic, is not healthy for you. We need to think about what serves us. And sometimes feeling pain that was caused to us, going down deep into the whatever is already present, like people stay in abusive relationship because they push away the feeling. If they would feel the pain, it will connect them to their inner guide that will tell them, get out of here. It hurts you. You're in pain. You're not well. This relationship does not support you. Get out. So you're here to say Scorpio is a very truthful sign. There is no bullshit. Okay. There is like, this is what's real. This is the truth. I'm telling you the truth. Okay. And it's this ability to see what's not seen, to read between the lines. It's a very psychic sign. It's Scorpios sense everything, even, the unspoken. So you have psychic abilities. It's like 2 water sun in 2 water signs. Your Mercury, your mind is also there. So the way you think, Mercury indicates of sun represent your persona, how you are, what you want in this world, what is the theme for you. And then Mercury represent how you think. Okay, so your thought process is also in Scorpio in the 4th house. So your mind is so connected to the emotional world and to the ability to go deep. It could be that as a child, you suffered from a lot of fears, from lots of like, you saw like frightening things and you were terrified. Or even if you had like, you saw the future and you were terrified, you were spooked out. Did it happen to you? Like you dreamt things happened or had visions?
There was a lot of, I don't even like, there are instances where I saw things, but I kind of like knew that I was going to go a certain way. I knew that things were going to happen to me. But in the throughout my childhood, there was a lot of pain because I saw a lot of pain. I saw a lot, like one of my first big memories was grief. My father passed when I was 4, so that was like a core experience, and then the ripples of that grief that lasted for the rest of my life because I saw how that affected my mother and her grief and the way that she navigated that and what it did to her and the ripples that it created within the family. So I saw emotion and people's nuances or being in dark places. I saw that close up pretty much all the time, so there were elements of that. Yeah,
and there is a lot because Uranus and Mars both conjunct your childhood line, so there was a lot of chaos in your childhood. There was instability, very unstable, right? So this is your sun. And then we look at the moon. So the moon is how you process emotions. And your moon is in Gemini in the 11th house. So this is a very airy position. So it means that you're very good in talking about your emotions, writing about your emotions, communicating. You need to share. Like if you're looking for a relationship, it would be with someone you can really share your emotions with. It's not like, someone who's like, oh, don't talk with me about this stuff, right? Like you need a partner who you can really share your emotions with, and you're very good at it. But there is also, because they're both air, so you had to go through a process to get to a place where you can really dive into your Scorpio nature and go deep into your emotions, because your initial tendency was, no, I don't want this heaviness, right? As a child, you're like, I'm here to have fun. And because you have your Leo rising. So your moon and your Leo, they're fire and air. They're all about like fun and friends. And like, I came here to have fun. I came here to socialize. I came here to speak up. I want to be in the center stage. This is your Leo. I want to shine. I don't want all this heaviness and pain and dark. And then like we cover, and, as children, we also you didn't have the capabilities to properly deal with that. It was too much, right? So for many years, you carry it and you're like, you kind of ignore it. And then there was a point in your life where you couldn't ignore it anymore, right? Yeah. What happened?
Well, my mum passed. So it was like really seeing the culmination of the years of her, the way that the grief affected her is it affected her emotionally. So depending on who you speak to, they call it bipolar now. Back in the day, they call it manic depression. So I very much saw her going down and then going up and going down and going up. So that instability of my childhood was because my mother's emotions were just never, they were being managed by pharmaceuticals. So if she went high, they'd bring her down. If she went down, they'd bring her up. But because then there was no adult in the house, like I initially had to take on the role of being a carer, but you didn't want that. I was like a kid of like single figures, 7, 8. I don't want to be my brother's mother. I want to be a pop star. I want to travel the world. I want to do music and creative things. So there was all of this kind of up and down. And of course, our home life was unstable because she was in and out of psychiatric care. And so in that, we also saw very clearly what the psychiatric care system looked like and why, and how people's mind, and what happens when people get shunned away because of their strong emotions in society. And that's, again, another thing that would, looking back on it, traumatize me, because as a child, going into psychiatric wards, seeing people walking in very different stages of mania or clarity, and then also noticing that your mom's one of them. So seeing her being really high or really low or in between, you then learn, or I then learned, to not rely on her, because I couldn't keep being pulled up and down. It was just like I had to find some sort of core for me to be stable. And the stability for me came from having a dream of like, okay, stability is not here, so I'm going to pin my stability on this wild dream. It's like, if you're going to pin your wagon to something, pin it to the biggest one ever. But I found solace in being able to write. I found solace in music, in performing, even though I was a very nervous performer. But I found solace in that creativity and connecting. And that's how I built my own spiritual connection, because my spiritual connection came from my creativity and being fed ideas and kind of pulling it in that way. So that might give you some idea of me.
Yeah. And you have, so you you know, like you have this rising in Leo, this was your soul. So the rising is what we need to rise to, is your soul's calling. And your soul is calling you, I want to be on the stage. I want to perform. I want to, you know, I want to be creative. I want to speak up. And that was the dream that carried you and helped you. You needed some detachment. You needed some emotional detachment because you couldn't, it's such a hard story, right? Like, you know, basically having no adult in your life to take care of, being so like needing to mature so quickly, so early in your life. And then seeing, you know, and probably, I guess, when you saw that your mom's emotional expression was categorized as being crazy,
Right.
it makes like, I don't want to be considered crazy, so I'm not going to show any signs of emotions. But what was the moment when you realized that you had to, that was not working anymore?
I think one, because I steered away from craziness because of all the family kind of pulled back, because in those days you didn't, you know, nowadays everyone talks about mental health. In those days you just didn't mention it. You don't talk about this stuff. It was not public. It wasn't cool. It wasn't fashionable. So all of this thing was going on at home, and of course I was going out, and most people who went to school with me would have no idea that that was my background, because I could, you know, I'd excel at sports and music and everything, and it's like, and I was popular, so outside of the home nobody knew. So yeah, I had this thing to carry me through. But also because the family didn't know how to manage it, and you know, they were trying to go like, you're the daughter, you should be doing something. I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, I don't know how to look after somebody who's got this going on. So then, like I said, I pulled out. And then also then they turned and looked to me and just thought, well, because you're not doing the right thing, you are crazy. And there was like almost like a time on my head that there would be a point where it was going to happen to me. And for a long time, I believed that that was my fate, that because there was this mental illness and it was hereditary, quote unquote, that was going to be my fate. So I'm like, well, let me try and like get something done as soon as possible so that it doesn't happen. And then, you know, I think it was towards, I don't know, I'd say kind of in my early 30s when I realized that just because something is around me, it doesn't mean it's for me. And then that's when I realized that I was safe. Didn't have to be my fate at all. That then I allowed myself to kind of start to feel into things a little bit more. But there was a lot of difficulty because obviously I have a brother. And it created a lot of rift between us because of him then assuming the role of carer and me not having the capacity to be there, but not being able to explain that I can't be there, because every time I just come and visit you, it takes me weeks to get out. It takes me weeks to get over it.
Because you're so sensitive. You're so sensitive. And yeah, it's like for you, when you walk into a place like that, you absorb all the energies of everyone in this room.
Yeah.
Everyone in the facility. It's like, it's because you're so, you're like an energetic sponge.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right.
And that's why I had to stay away. It was like twofold, because I couldn't say, well, you know, when I come and visit you, I feel this way, because they would feel rejected. But then also, if I say that I have emotional problems by being there, then I'd be like, well, see, you are crazy. You know, it was like I was like backed into a corner where nothing that I could say would be right, because it could always be directed as proof that I was losing my mind, or, you know, it was on the cards. So when I realized that it wasn't, I think that's when I kind of allowed myself to feel a little bit more. But then also just frustrations of things not working out, spending so long trying to chase this dream that just never, like, always just seemed to be like, oh my God, you know, I just like, was the party that I would have gone to was where the person was going to be. I was always like half a step behind, or always just missing out slightly on something. And then towards like about 10 years ago, that song, the attraction song, was kind of the pinnacle of me working with someone independently and really having the time to build up and get my voice right, get my songs right, and get them sounding like I wanted to, as opposed to years of running in a studio and trying to get a song finished in one day, which doesn't happen at all, ever. And so just building that all the way up, coming out of it, and then finding someone that understood me creatively. And it was almost like a second language. And there was almost like a real connection there on many levels, many red flags as well that I chose to ignore, but, you know, on many levels. But the part that I always want people to understand me for is my creativity, because that's my essence. And if you hear me on
it, you're rising.
Yeah, if you hear me where I'm talking from creatively, if you've got a sense of humor, if we can talk about spirituality, if we can talk about all of those things and create, then, you know, you're the best person. You're the best person for it. So there was like a relationships of sorts that created that music, that created everything that came from that. But just at the point that I felt that we were just about to kind of launch it, because we're doing this all independently, I walked in one day and it's like, I'm walking away, I'm going. And it was like 2 years of slowly kind of building, finding my creative voice, finding my confidence in order to get the songs the way that I wanted to. And just at the point where things are starting to move a little bit closer, the other half of the creative equation goes, I don't want to do this anymore, I'm leaving next week, and hands you a hard drive. And that's how it just went bang like this. And also because so much of it had been done quietly, no one really knew that that's the level of the relationship, and that's what came from that as well. So I was heartbroken, but I was heartbroken and I couldn't tell anyone. And for many years I didn't sing. I couldn't listen to music. I didn't sing. I just was like, forget it. You know, I walked away from my family for this. I gave everything. I kind of lived in like a circle of like just about coming in, just about going out to fuel this dream. And then now when I thought I was like almost close to it, then I just get all of my stuff on a hard drive. It's like, I don't even have a laptop at the moment. What the hell am I going to do with this when I've got like 2 years of work on this bloody hard drive? And this is like what I've been working for. So that was like a real point of real heartbreak and having to deal with a lot of anger, as you can imagine, you know, like a lot of that. So that was kind of dealing with that and then kind of clawing my way through that and working out, well, what am I going to do now? Because then I was in my early 40s. I'm like, this isn't the right, is this the right time? Can I relaunch? Can I drag things back? What am I doing? So I went into sales and different work while I was trying to figure it out and trying to refined who I was. And at that time, those were the years, going into the years then when my mum's health was declining and eventually she passed. And so when she was then no longer physically here, then the relationship between me and my brother was like, okay, we're facing each other now. And when you remove a parental energy from a situation, whether they can parent you or not in the way that you need to, something is gone. And then you're faced with these two. And then the reality of that relationship came front and center to me as well. And it culminated in me having to walk away. Realizing that I'd allow, you know, when you're talking about pain and not allowing yourself to feel the pain, not allowing yourself to see how bad a situation is, because part of me felt that, well, if he wants to be like this with me, maybe I deserve it because I'm not really there, you know. So you're allowing someone to abuse you because you feel that you deserve it because you're not fulfilling your role. And when I made the decision that I'm going to have to walk away from all of this if I'm going to ever get myself back, and then I had to hit the deck, as it were, and go into the depths of my soul to really just pull myself up out of it as well. So that was really kind of going all the way down and then slowly building myself back up.
Yeah, that was your moment. That was the point where you had to connect with your Scorpio. And your Scorpio is your sun energy. So this is your ego. This is where you are who you are. People think that's one of the misconceptions of spirituality. And I talk about it in my first chapter on the sun. The astrology, in astrology, the sun is the most important. We call it planet. It's not really a planet, but for astrology purposes, we call it a planet. It's the most important planet in the chart. And the sun connects with our ego. And it's not about being egoistic. It's about learning to cultivate a healthy ego. We don't want to eliminate the ego. This is not true. And people who think that, like, oh, ego is not important and I need to be spiritual, so I put my ego on the side, they cannot sustain it. Eventually, like they bring themselves into situations that are not good for them, that are harmful. The ego is here to want us to be. Ego creates desires. Ego is what generates desires in us. If we don't listen to our true desires and we think like, oh, they're wrong, they're narcissists, or they make us egocentric, and then we don't embody ourselves. We're not authentic because we still want that. It's like, people come to me and it's like, do you want a relationship? No, I don't want a relationship. I'm fine. And it's like, and then we're like, no, it's not that you don't want a relationship. You're just so hurt because, you had so many bad relationships and now you're afraid to admit that you want it. But we have to admit, because there is pain there. So you have to admit your desire and you have to leave the pain. And then you maybe have a relationship, you maybe not. But if you are authentic, you will attract the right things to yourself. And when people think that their ego is bad and they eliminate the ego, the part of them that creates the desire, the most important desire is, I want to be happy. There is nothing wrong with that. We need the ego to cultivate the desire. If we don't have this desire to be happy, what will guide us? And then we're tuned with ourselves and we can walk and do what we came here to do when we're honest about what we really want.
Yeah.
So for you, it's Scorpio. It's like you had to go in Scorpio. It comes with sometimes like some sort of a challenge, okay? Because Scorpio is all about transformations, and we don't transform when we're in our comfort zone, right? Then we don't have motivation. Unfortunately, we're human beings, okay? So this is like when we feel comfortable, when everything is fine, we don't grow, we don't transform. We only grow and transform through hardship, through challenges. And lucky for us, life has that in abundance, right? There are always challenges to go through. And yes, and it's interesting because so your midheaven is in Aries like mine, but your rising is Leo. So you're pointed for fire. Okay, so you're pointed, the chart directs you to connect with fire, but you don't have a lot of fire in your chart. So it means that for you, what I mentioned before, like cultivating fire in your life, like being able to be bold, to speak up, to not be afraid and to think like, oh, what people will think about me. And part of your life lesson in Gemini in the 11th house is a lot about embracing that you're different, that you are unique, that you're not like everyone else. This whole like, will they think I'm crazy? Like if you don't care, like, okay, you can say I'm crazy. You just say it because you don't understand. I am completely 100% in alignment with myself, and I know that I'm doing what I do to save myself, and that's ego. Okay, that's ego. Not having ego is like, yeah, I'll go there and I'll suffer, and I'll just I'll absorb all these energies and I'll be a wreck for a few weeks, and then, but no, that's not healthy for you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely that. It's definitely that, and it's getting to the point, like you're saying now, of being bold. It's like even that song, it's like a line in that song, step up and be bold, richly, which is now coming out of the other side of that kind of the darkest night of my soul, that period of time, and then rising out of it, and then really seeing that everything is already placed around me. Really, I don't have to go looking for anything. I don't really have to come up with anything. There are things for me to learn. There are skills and things for me to learn to keep moving forward. But ultimately, what kind of kept me safe and maybe got me to bypass a lot of the pain, good or bad, then has been my saving grace, really. So that gratitude for all of that comes back, because I can see that all of this was for a reason. People, you know, had expectations of me. There are people that really, you know, like family, who really don't see where I was coming from or hear where I was coming from, especially when I was trying to voice my frustrations. I think it's difficult when you are around someone who's ill and you can't express how you feel, because you're not the ill person, you know. So and that's where I felt a lot of the time that I was stifled, because it was like, this is how I feel about not being able to communicate with my mom. This is how I feel about the fact that she's up one day and down the next, and I don't know what to do. I feel frustrated. I feel like, you know, trying to say that, but they'll be like, but your mom's ill. So literally invalidating my point of view, which was then, you know, and the worst thing that you can ever do to anyone or to yourself is to stifle your expression, your opinion, how you feel about stuff.
Yeah.
But I realized,
ill. Yeah, you're not invalidating her. She has a permission to be ill, but I have a permission to feel what I feel about that, right?
Yeah. And that was always the part that it was difficult to voice, to the point where I just didn't voice it anymore. To, you know, you kind of stifle these things down. So that's why I led so much into creativity and music and writing, because it was the only way, that it was the only place that I could speak, because no one else heard me or allowed me to have this. And of course I was crazy for having this dream, you know. So all of the things. Yeah.
And one more thing that I want to end with is that in astrology we also look at what is currently happening in your life. So we have the chart that represent your personality, and we learn about you learn about yourself, and then we also see where you are, you know, like what kind of cycle you're in, what are the influences in your life right now, and what are they ask from you. So one thing to note is that right now you're in an Aries cycle. It started March 30 and it will last this year, and it will last till May 2025. It's like a 2.5 year cycle. It's called progressed moon cycle. And you're about like 7 months into it. Yeah, March, and now we're October. And this means that this is your time to connect with this fire, to connect with your pioneer, to connect with your initiator, to start new projects, to be bold, to be brave. It's like, this is the time to start new things, okay? To publish a book, to do all these things, to get out there, you know, not be afraid of what people think, you know, like, yes, I'm crazy. You know, people, the most, you know, successful people are somewhat crazy, right? It's like, you know, because if you're not crazy, you're just, what do you have to tell the world, right? We're all a little crazy. So it's like, it's being this, you know, being you with all your power. Then you will enter a Taurus cycle, and Taurus cycle is quieter, it's slower. It will be a time where all these new ideas and new projects that you initiate during your Aries time will have to be solidified. They will have to get more grounded. Then, like, you know, if you had like 5 new initiations, you'll find the ones that you really want to stick to and continue working with. Okay, so this is a different type of, you know, like the shades of different cycles that we're at. And you currently have Jupiter in your 10th house. So 10th house is the house of career, and Jupiter is the sign of expansion and good luck. So it started March 17 this year, and it will last till May 6 next year. So this is a very auspicious time for your career. So together with this Aries cycle and this Jupiter in the 10th house, everything you do in your career can have, the Jupiter is the largest planet in the solar system. It can have the blessing, the gift of Jupiter that, it will be easier for you to thrive during this time. So take advantage of it.
I will. Thank you so much for that. It's nice to get another perspective. There's like you say, there's so many modalities that can look at where you are and what you're doing, and also to make sense of things, make sense of things that maybe there was a little bit of sadness around, especially, with the family situation. It's not an easy thing to reconcile, knowing that in order to save yourself, you have to leave people to fend for themselves, and knowing that maybe they're not able to do so, and then will hold a lot of blame to you, and not being able to see it from your point of view and reconcile it. Who knows what will happen on that side of things. But I knew at that point that I had to walk away, because it was for, like you said, there's a point in time where you stop bypassing the pain and you actually connect, and you look at someone and think, this person is not good to have in my life. And it was that period of realizing that, and then coming away from that. Then you have not flashbacks just of that period, but flashbacks of your life together, when you realize this has been going on for a long time. This person has been against you for pretty much all of your life. And the realization of that was hard to take, is hard to take. But then you come out going, well, it's taught me something, a lesson that I had to find that ego, and allow ego to be a good thing, as opposed to all of the wording around it that can be negative-ish. So we stay away from being in our ego. So yeah, I really appreciate what you've shared there for me as well. And I hope as well people listening will, not just find out more about me, but find out more about how a deeper reading can really open up aspects of yourself and start to put clarity in it, and give you maybe the closure that you need, but maybe the healing and the perspective that sometimes trying to figure it out from your own brain can't really give you, so I appreciate that. And I just want you to speak about your book as well before you go. Just talk about what you're creating.
Yeah, so the book is called Planetary Balance for a Wholesome Life. And it has every planet. We have 10 planets, including the sun and the moon, has a chapter. And I talk about how the planet connects with our human experience. So, for example, as we talked about the sun, we talked about what does it mean to have a strong, healthy sun energy, to have a healthy ego. So we talked about a little bit about it, like connecting with our desires, being true to ourselves, not thinking that, like there is like some spiritual self that we need to attain, but really being honest with what we really want, and understanding the need of boundaries, of connecting to our self. Okay, this is ego. Ego is basically self. Okay, so understanding that we need this separation of boundaries to self. And then, the moon energy, the emotional world, we talked about that. So every planet, then we have the Mercury is the mental mind. How do I bring my thoughts, my mental mind into a healthy balance? And how do I bring my feminine energy, Venus, into a healthy balance? How do I bring my masculine energy to a healthy balance? And then we have the outer planets, so Pluto is the psychological patterns. How do I bring my psychological patterns into a healthy balance? So every planet connect to some aspect of our being. So I explain how this planet manifests in us, what part of us it is connected to, and how we need to work with it in the way that is very in line with what we talked about, in a way that is accepting and embracing who we truly are and what the situation really is, rather than trying to manifest something and imagine something different, or trying to pretend that we're something else. It's all about acceptance. It's all about looking at life and at ourselves in the eyes and admitting what we really are, what we really feel, what we really want, and respecting our limits, respecting our boundaries, like you did. Like this is so important, respecting the fact that we have anger, we do suffer. Not my approach, my general approach is that even though I come from years of, like, I studied Buddhism for more than 20 years now, and I've been practicing meditation, and I know the fourth noble truth, and there are many takes on it, and many Buddhist teachers teach it differently today. But, the idea that we can escape suffering is very counterproductive. Mm. And many Buddhist teachers also understand it today. The idea, the first idea of Buddhism that came is like, all this is suffering, and then there is the suffering is rooted in our egos and in in being pushing away pain and clinging to joy, and then there is a path towards releasing from suffering, and then you can attain release from suffering. And when we think that we can escape suffering and we accept ourselves to be out of suffering and we suffer, then we push it away. Then we're not real, because it's like, oh, I'm so spiritual. I practice meditation. I do yoga. I eat healthily. I pray for everyone's well-being all the time. Like, why do I still suffer? And then we blame ourselves. We think like, oh, something is wrong with me. I'm not doing something right. But then we're not willing to look at it in the eye and see, yes, I am in pain right now. And pain is part of, I don't like there is this sentence like, pain is mandatory, but suffering is optional. Again, I just see how it influenced people and how it created mechanisms of escapism and escaping what we truly feel. Oh, if I'm suffering, so there is something wrong with me, or I'm not doing something right, which is not true. Suffering is part of life. How can you not suffer when you have a mother that goes through mental health issues when you're so young? How can you not suffer? This is ridiculous. There are some things that, we look at them and it's like, you cannot, it causes suffering. So, you can call it pain, you can call it suffering, you can call it mandatory, call it not. Question is whether you look at it in the eyes, whether you're willing to accept and embrace how you truly feel about that, and be in your body and let these feelings reside in you instead of like pushing them away. Right. And then, and it's in all levels. So every planet connects you with some part of you that needs attention. And I call it a wholesome life, because we really do need, like I said, we have so much expectations of ourselves today. We want to reach fulfillment in all levels. And if we want that, we need to cultivate healthy balance with all our aspects. Mm-hmm. Okay. It's encompassing. If you just work on your sun energy, but you don't work on your soul's energy, you're in trouble. Okay, this is Neptune. Okay, if you just work on your psychology, but you don't work on your emotions, you're in trouble. Or, we need to cultivate a healthy mind pattern. We need to cultivate a healthy psychological pattern. They work together. We can't just have one. We need to have the feminine. We need to have the masculine. We need all of them. So that's why I really think there is no one planet that is important. We need to have relationship with all of them. And in astrology, the language is so much, you mentioned the back of the magazines, right? The signs. The language was all about the signs, the sun signs, which is ridiculous because you're a Scorpio. I know tons of people who are Scorpio who have completely different chart than you. They have a different rising sign. They have a different moon sign. Everything is different. So how can you say that you as a Scorpio, will have the same, the same things that will happen to you this week, like another Scorpio that has a completely different influences in her life. You're in an Aries cycle, someone else is in her Scorpio cycle, so it's like, it's ridiculous. So, and the constellations and the signs, they're far away from us. The planets, people don't speak about the planets. The planets are right here. We can see some of them even in our naked eyes. So let's bring the conversation a little bit about the planets and about how the book is not so much about astrology. It's more about what does it mean to be a human. It's about the human condition and how we can use the wisdom of the planets to get where we want to be, to get excited about life, to reach this wholesomeness that I experience now when I talked with you about like reaching this sweet spot. I want everyone to feel that. I want everyone to be in this sweet spot where they wake up in the morning and they feel like, oh, I'm so blessed, truly blessed to be right here with these people in this place doing what I do. I want everyone to have that. So I hope the book will help them to get there.
Wow. Perfect. What an offering. And because you share about it so passionately, there it is. So when do you think it will be done and be out?
I have no idea. My aim is to sign a contract for the book by September next year. So, and then we'll know when it's coming up. But
okay.
There is soon going to be, and that's almost done. I'm making a survey on my website. There is going to be a survey where you ask questions and it tells you which planet's energy you need to bring into balance right now. And it tells you how. And this is an excerpt of my book. There are like for each one of the personal planets, we have 5 personal planets that are most significant in our being. And it is coming up really soon. I hope in a month it will be there.
Thank you so much, Yael. Can you just share where people can find you before we close out?
Yeah, so my website, yaelastrology.com. Yael is Yael. And astrology, so yaelastrology.com. And if you sign up for my newsletter, there is a freebie coming up, really cool, about the emotions, how we process emotions based on our moon sign. And then you'll also know about the survey and when it's coming up, and the book, of course. And you can also find me on Instagram, yael.astrology.
Thank you so much for today's deep dive on astrology, and also you taking a deep dive on me as well. I really appreciate it. It's clarified many things. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was so deep and meaningful. I love this conversation with you, Carol. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yael, for sharing your gift and your perspective on this episode, and thank you for listening. If you want to find out more about me, you can link into my website, which is carolmaywhittick.com, carolmaywhittick.com. This message is also for you if you know that there is a purpose to your life, if you're ready to turn it into a breathtaking reality. My purpose, as I've discovered and you've heard a little bit more about in this episode, is to help you make it happen. So if you're ready to take the next step in your transformation and you want to get there with my support, accountability and radical honesty, contact me to find out more about my Higher Energetic Resonance one-to-one spiritual life coaching program. Find me on all the social medias, so Carol May Whittick on Facebook and on LinkedIn if you dig into that side of things, and on Instagram I'm Kazmic, Cazmick. Until the next episode, have a great week. Enjoy. Bye.